So today we are talking with Andrea Kaplan, who's a senior customer success manager at LinkedIn, and we're going to dig into your background, customer success, all the good stuff. As I said before, I have a million questions I could ask you, but I want to start with a very hopefully simple question, but maybe a little bit hard question. If you could explain what you do in 6 words or less, what would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I'm a strategic advisor to clients that are leveraging our product and have partnered with us.
Cool. And I want to dig into that a bit more. One of the questions I want to start with too is you have been in customer success for over 6 years. And for people who might be thinking about moving into that space, I know a lot of educators are leaving the education space, and customer success is definitely a role that many of them are targeting. How would you describe the space of customer success?
Yeah, it's interesting because I've been doing this for 6 years, 7 years. When I started, customer success was a title or a position that I don't think was really known about, or it was kind of just becoming what it is today. And so now it's this buzzword of you hear it all the time. And I think largely because this is such a hugely growing role within the tech industry. And so I would say that customer success is pretty easy to get into, to be honest, because at the end of the day, you're just trying to delight your clients. You have to be someone who really wants to partner with them. It is not customer service, it is very different. So, how I would say the difference is, because I have to explain this even to my husband sometimes, is I'm not a customer service representative. Um, I would categorize that as a little bit more tactical. And then customer success is strategic. And so that's kind of the line between the two roles, or like where there's confusion. And I would try and split that up is, we're really trying to partner with our clients in a post sales environment. So once they've decided to partner with us, now it's my job to make them love our product and our company and me as a result. And it doesn't take a lot to do that. You have to enjoy working with people. You have to enjoy whatever product it is that you're servicing or supporting, because I think that really helps you build a better relationship at the end of the day and helps you be fulfilled by and that comes across when you're working with your clients. And so, there's not much to it. It's just building relationships at the end of the day. It's kind of like sales, except sales is not always a component of your role in customer success. However, it can be. But for people looking to break into the industry or the role, I would say look at different job descriptions, because they can be very different. And I would say the way they can vary is primarily if there's a sales component or if there's not. So there's a true CSM that truly is just there to retain their client and support them and partner with them strategically. And then you have a customer success manager that will do that, and then a bunch of other things. So they'll have to cross sell, they'll have to upsell, they'll have to renew contracts, and that's all of this sales stuff that can come along with it, if that's also something that you're looking for. So make sure that you read the job descriptions and that it's a good fit for what you're looking for and what your skill set is.
I think it's so interesting that you said it isn't customer service. I worked in customer service. I think many people have. I actually think it's one of the best things you can do in your career. Like, it gives you a great amount of respect and empathy for people
Yeah.
who do that
Yeah.
work. Um, but it's quite interesting that you made that distinction. I'd love to hear a little bit more about the distinction, but also I would assume maybe while you don't see yourself doing customer service, the elements, the essence of customer service is really present. And it,
Yes, absolutely. I think, it's like the foundation of a lot of what we do, but because it's a long-term partnership where I'm really working with these clients for years, and I'm getting to know their CHRO, sometimes their CEO, sometimes their CFO, their head of diversity and inclusion and belonging. And we're really talking weekly on a strategic level about how to move the needle regarding, how they're using our product. Are we meeting their goals? What does good look like? What does great look like? I'm in employee engagement. So really, how can we impact their culture? So on and so on and so on. That's where I see the biggest difference, because customer service is amazing. I've also been in customer service and loved it. And I think that's what got me to where I'm at today, because I did really love it, but I wanted to take it several steps further.
That makes sense. It's almost like you're seeing it as, you want to delight the customer, but beyond that, the way that you're doing it is more strategic and long term versus maybe short term transaction. When I think about your background, like we could go into your LinkedIn profile, can see that you made a couple of different pivots. So you started out in the marketing space and then you went into the event planning space and now you're in the customer success space. And so, how do you think those other functional areas or industries kind of set you up with the foundations for customer success?
I think it set me up very well. My background in marketing and events and sales was all within hospitality. I had such a deep passion for that. I think part of that is growing up in Chicago, where there's this huge food scene and beverage scene. And so I just had such a love for that at a young age, and worked at restaurants throughout college, and then moved to wine country and worked at wineries doing events and marketing and sales in Napa and Sonoma. And so that's a lot of what I do now, as far as managing customer expectations, creating experiences that at the end of the day, I know are top tier and really, really going to please the people that I've partnered with. So, different capacity as far as being in the event industry, but very relatable as far as wanting to currently create an experience for my clients now that's not an event, but it's a partnership. And I want to make sure that they find value in me personally, in our product, in partnering with our organization. And then a lot of it is, being like a project manager, right? Because a customer success manager wears many, many, many hats. That's one thing I would add. If you're looking to join customer success, it doesn't just stop at working with clients. There's a lot that happens behind the scenes. You become everything to your clients. And so while we love that, it's still a lot to handle day in and day out. But that, I think, what I handled or, went through with all of my roles through hospitality, and the customer always comes first in hospitality, really set me up or primed me or showed me how fulfilled I was by having those relationships.
Sometimes when I'm having a conversation like this right now, I'm always thinking about my clients who are sometimes hesitant to do an informational interview with someone or reach out to a stranger because it's like, I don't want to sound stupid. I don't know what to ask. Right. And so as you're describing your work, it's like I hear the words that you're saying.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like if I'm not even in that space, I just have no idea what you mean.
Mm-hmm.
It feels a bit abstract, right? And
Yeah.
so I'm curious when you talk about, for example, creating an experience that would delight the clients or the partners that you're working with. Can you give me an example of something that you're working on now that would fall into that category, or something that you've worked on in a previous role that would be an example of that?
Yeah. So I would say we can get very minuscule with an experience, but also very broad. So in my previous comments, when I was saying experience, I meant just kind of the partnership experience. So their relationship with me, how they view me, they could think I'm the worst CSM in the world, which I would hate. And that would be their experience with me. And as a result, with our product and with the company, or they could be over the moon with me. And so I'm just here hoping and leaning into my skill set with the goal to provide them the best experience possible through our partnership. But day to day, week to week, month to month, we're getting on calls, we're talking about their strategy, I'm trying to learn about their business, I'm having brainstorming sessions to really ask them hard-hitting questions to make them think a little bit more about their culture, because at the end of the day, that's what we're partnering together on, is how to move the needle to get their culture where they need or want it to be. And so hoping that they see all of the efforts through those kind of mini experiences all culminating into one. We also do quarterly business reviews, or an annual review, where we're really looking at the partnership. We're looking at the metrics we've seen, how their employees interacted with the product throughout the year. And then those are the calls where I get the CHRO on the line, or the CEO, and it's a really fun collaborative environment where they're giving us business updates and talking to us about what they see for the next 3, 5 to years. And that's really rewarding for me, and in turn, I hope for the client.
I think one distinction there is, you mentioned this before. I know that you are really passionate about employee experience and impacting employee culture all the way down to the employee. And that's the space that you're working in customer success. And I believe you have been for the past 6 years, right? And so it seems like customer success in that area would be very different than customer success when you're selling a particular product, or hospitality space, or whatever it might be.
Yeah. Yeah. It all depends on the product or the space that you're in. When I recently left my last role, which I was deeply fulfilled by, but made the choice to leave just for personal reasons, I knew I couldn't leave the employee engagement space just because I loved it so much. So there are a lot of different directions you can take. But for me, I felt like I'd kind of found my calling 6 years ago when I started originally at OC Tanner as a customer success manager, and like the culture and employee engagement space, and really just kind of knew that was such a passion of mine as a result of some employment experiences and different things, that this was the right trajectory for me. But absolutely, there are many different products and different routes you can take to be a customer success manager.
So far in your career, you have been in the tech space. And I believe that some of your earlier companies were more small, medium-sized company, and now you've moved into a large company like
Yeah.
LinkedIn. How do
Yeah.
you see the difference between customer success in a smaller company versus a large company?
Yeah. Great question. So my first customer success role, our organization was about 1,500 to 2,000 employees, which I felt is kind of a sweet spot for customer success, because they'd scaled just to the right point of having roles really defined, but not too defined to where it's just tunnel vision and you can collaborate and work with other teams and kind of step outside of your normal day-to-day role to gain new insight, or just take on passion projects, etc. And then I moved to Achievers, which was a startup. And so they have, I believe, about 500, although they're growing incredibly fast. So I think last year they added several hundred employees. When I started, it was at about 250. And so that was a drastically different experience. I loved it because I had access to every team. So, I could work with engineering, I could work with IT, I could work with product, I could work with marketing. There was so much collaboration. But what happens when you work with a startup, which everybody I think knows at this point, is you take on a lot more than what's traditional for your role. And so when you don't have specific process in place for something, or all of the resources figured out, you just end up doing so much more. You learn so much more at the same time, but you do so much more. And so they were, when I left, in the process of continuing to scale, because they really saw so much growth over the last several years. And the great thing about employee engagement and tech with the pandemic is we've been able to really lean in to our products, because with the workforce changing, it seems almost daily at this point, culture and employee experience is like the number one thing right now for what different demographics are looking for, and just what's going to retain your amazing talent. So they saw so much growth because companies really embraced, wow, this platform is something that we really need here. It's a necessity. And it's not something we can afford to just have to check a box or cut our budget on. So that those 2 years at Achievers were amazing because I did get to get my hands dirty and dive into different areas, and really do so much more than I ever thought I would while I was there. And then now I'm at LinkedIn, much bigger than both of them, and also owned by Microsoft. And so what I love about that is they have scaled things to a place where the role is defined. So it gives you a lot more time to devote to other aspects of personal and professional goals. That's a big part of the culture. And so, aside from being a customer success manager there, which is amazing, I also have the ability to be involved in ERGs or different committees and things like that. So definitely a different experience depending on what size the company is, but they're all great in their own regard. It's just kind of depending on where you are in your career, what you're looking for, and then making the right choice from there.
Yeah, I think so many people when they're navigating a job search, it's so easy to think about the large, sexy, flashy companies, right? They're the ones that like come to mind, and everybody wants to go there, or it feels that way, right? And you have not been at LinkedIn that long. You've been there 3 months now.
Mhm.
What what advice would you give to job seekers that maybe you experienced as you were navigating your own search and thinking about making a pivot into a larger company?
Oh boy. I would normally say networking, but I'm honestly horrible at networking. I call myself an extroverted introvert because I am an introvert. I, in the professional sense, try to be as extroverted as I will allow myself to be naturally, but I have a hard time just kind of throwing myself out there. So I think that's kind of job seeking 101. And they always say it's about who you know, not what you know, which is always kind of a component of a lot of ways people get jobs. But I was lucky enough to start my job search in a market where we have the great resignation or the great reshuffle, as we're calling it at LinkedIn. So the first thing I would say is if you're considering making a move, now is a really great time. And I would recommend doing it sooner rather than later, just because the job market is really great right now. And it's a great time to find where you think you will fit in best. So that's the first thing I'll say. The second thing I'll say is reach out to whoever's posting those jobs. So, you might hit the apply button directly on the LinkedIn post, but you'll see most of the time who posted that. So feel free to reach out to them and just establish a connection and say you're really interested. I transparently applied to LinkedIn and didn't think I'd ever get a response, and I did. And it was a little bit of a longer process because it's a larger organization. So I expected that, but I wish I had some really helpful insight, but I almost feel just lucky to have been picked out of however many resumes and applications that they saw. Once you do get in, though, I would say, people get really nervous with their interviews. The one mindset I always have when I'm interviewing or talking with people is I have nothing to lose, assuming that you have a job, because I didn't have anything to lose. I was employed. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. And that's always kind of been a reassurance for me and calmed any nerves I ever had, because if I have a bad day, I have a bad day. It is what it is. Or if it's not the right fit, it's not the right fit. But remind yourself that interviews go both ways. You could easily get a bad vibe and bow out gracefully. It really does go both ways. And I think that's the one thing that over the last 7 years, I've just continually reminded myself as I've, figured out what the right next step was for me.
That's great. Great advice. Yeah. In kind of negotiation terms, I think about it as your BATNA, which is your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. It's
Yep.
just another way to say, like, if I don't move forward with this opportunity because I have a choice, what's my best alternative? And sometimes it's like just waiting for something else, which is a
Right.
great choice to have. But we don't always think about it that way. When we're in the process.
Yep. You
Yeah.
also mentioned personal brand a little bit earlier as far as how you're presenting yourself on LinkedIn. And I would say step that up. Make sure that you've optimized your profile. There are LinkedIn learning courses that will teach you, what you need to have on your profile to stand out a little bit. But beyond that, be active. And I'm guilty of not being as active lately as I need to be to establish my personal brand just because I'm a working mom through a pandemic. But that I used to do very well. And so I would say to make sure that you're, posting, become a creator if you want. If you're a great writer, have some authentic engagement on there. Seek out people to follow who are leaders in the industry that you're interested in following or being a part of. Just be more active on LinkedIn in general.
Yeah, I love that. I saw on your profile that you have a certification for Rock Your LinkedIn Profile
Yeah.
course. Is that something you would recommend to others?
Yeah, I mean, it really, especially if like you've really never paid much attention to the different areas of the profile options on LinkedIn, and it is continually, getting enhanced pretty frequently now that we're in this, workforce pivotal change. LinkedIn is really focused on making sure that people feel like they can put their personality and every aspect of themselves and represent themselves, accurately on their profile. So that is a great course to take. And I know it's going to get updated soon as well.
That's great. Something else you mentioned in there is that you're a working mom. You were a working mom throughout the pandemic, and you just navigated a job search. Like, it's a lot of things to be managing at one time. And I saw recently on your LinkedIn profile that a few weeks into your role at LinkedIn, you really gave them a great shout out for having a good culture for um, health and wellness, work life balance. How have you seen that as a working mom and from a culture perspective at LinkedIn?
Yeah. So, I will start off by saying I absolutely loved my last job at Achievers. It was so fulfilling to me. It was a very, very hard decision to leave. A lot of tears shed over making that decision. But like I said, it was, operating in a startup environment. And as a mom with a 3-year-old, which is a very, very active age, I for me personally and for my family had to make the choice to leave a startup environment because of that and focus more on the work life balance and just giving myself and some time back to my family. And LinkedIn surprises me every day with the resources that they have specifically for parents, but for every single person, every walk of life within the organization. There's so many ERGs, employee resource groups, which I had at my last organization as well. But this one, they have one for women, they have one for families, they have one for people with disabilities, and I have a chronic illness called fibromyalgia. So also, being able to be part of something for people who experience maybe invisible illnesses where I look like I feel fine, but maybe I don't. That was also really important to me. So there were so many components of the culture that really spoke to me. And they gave me all of this information during the interview process and offered that I could reach out to people who belong to ERGs, et cetera, just to make sure it felt like home. And it really did. It really did. One of their first interview questions to me was, what does diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging mean to you? And so instead of talking about the job or my skill set, they wanted to know more about me as a person. And clearly that's a big part of their culture. And that's why it was one of their first questions. So the culture has just been amazing. They have so many resources for parents. They have help and assistance with backup childcare. They will reimburse you for summer camp. They will reimburse you for backup childcare in addition to helping you find it. They give us in days, which are different thematic days based on the values of LinkedIn. So actually, May is Family In Day, where we will focus that Friday on whatever that means to us as an individual. We have no meeting days to give us some time back to ourselves where we're working, but we're just not bombarded with meetings. There are just, I can't even talk about everything, but work-life balance is clearly just such a huge part of their focus. It's all about employees first, because they know that, a happy employee equals, a successful organization, essentially.
For someone who cares so much about employee experience, it seems like such a great organization for you to have sought out or landed in.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah, cool. And one thing you mentioned to me when we first kicked off this call is that you're working in an arm of LinkedIn called Glint, which is like a feedback opportunity for employees. And that is that for internal employees at LinkedIn, or how does that work?
No, so it's a product that's
Okay.
sold. Yeah. And it is a voice of employee tool. So basically, it is, a platform, a cloud service that organizations leverage to survey employees, do quarterly pulses to understand what's going on. We have people science experts that are deriving questions based on industry trends or just psychology in general, just to make sure that the questions being asked matter and that the results that are coming in are telling a story. And so you can do quarterly pulses, you can do ad hoc surveys, you can do life cycle surveys, which is huge. So how is your onboarding experience? Because we do see traditionally a lot of heavy turnover in the first even 30 to 90 days of somebody joining a company. An exit survey to understand why they're leaving and what problems there were, what hotspots that we need to address as an organization to make sure we don't keep losing people because of this topic. So a whole array of different types of surveys, all about the employee experience and why and how it's impacting culture.
Oh, that's great. That sounds like a lot of fun. And did you, when you saw the job posting for this opportunity, did you know that you would be working on customer success in this arm of the company, employee experience, employee feedback, or was it a little bit ambiguous and you learned more as you went through the process?
Yeah, no, I knew, which was intentional because like I said, love what I've been doing for the last, up until now, 5, 6 years. And I didn't want to leave that. Like I said, I loved my last job and what I was doing before that within employee engagement. And so I just couldn't see myself doing anything else. And I'm someone who needs to feel fulfilled and excited to sit down at my desk every day, or else why am I working? We spend so much of our time working and I don't want to, not find enjoyment out of it. So I was talking to the recruiter. I had actually applied to just general LinkedIn customer success roles. And then when we talked about my background, she said, I think you'd be a better fit for this other role that we have open, but it's not posted. And so then we kind of pivoted and went in this direction instead, which I wasn't applying for it. I didn't know it was open. I knew of Glint, but I didn't know that I would end up landing specifically within the Glint arm of LinkedIn.
I think one thing that's really helpful in there is often, I think when people are making a career transition, it can feel really overwhelming. And depending on how many things you're trying to change at any given time, it makes it more difficult because now you're having to tell lots of different stories about yourself. You're having to adapt to a new maybe company, industry, function, location. But a common theme that I see is sometimes if you can hold on to like one piece that you care about the most and pull it through, then it gives you some confidence in that one area while you're kind of getting up to speed in all the other spaces. And so it feels like you had that really strong passion and alignment for employee engagement, employee experience. And so you could pull that through and then learn the other stuff along the way.
Yep, Absolutely.
I want to end with one question. Thank you so much for sharing everything you've shared so far. I'm sure it will be helpful to others. And I always think about, I care a lot about connecting with others in our career. As you said, you're terrible at networking, but we all know that it's really important. So in the year to come, who would you be interested in connecting with in your career?
Are we talking small scale or large scale or anybody?
It could be anybody.
There is a thought leader named Josh Bersin who I have followed for a very long time since my first customer success manager role. And he's really kind of a visionary in this space, I would say. And he's identifying workplace trends and what's to come for years to come. And he's always so insightful. He has an academy actually that I've considered enrolling in, but I would love and greatly enjoy connecting with him on one if ever possible, just because I just love what he writes. I love his insight, and I think he just adds so much value to the space in general.
I love that. What a fun addition. And I think it's so great that you mentioned that because I'm guessing because you said that there might be a little bit of hesitation to reach out to somebody like that who you would you be hesitant to reach out to him and say, "Hey, I want
Yes.
to connect?" Yeah. Yeah. And is it because yeah, well, what would make you hesitant about reaching out?
I mean, he's a busy guy. So I'm also someone who doesn't like to impose, and naturally as an introvert, just feel like that would be such an imposition on him and his schedule. I'm sure he gets people bothering him every day who are in the industry just asking random questions or whatever the case is. But I've actually been fortunate enough to see him speak live, and he's just great. He's so insightful. So I can tell he's a wonderful guy and would probably be open to it, time permitting, but he's a busy guy. I will also add Dan Price is just it sounds like you might know who he is, Gravity Payments, but I also saw him speak live several years ago in Portland, and it really resonated with me. He's so focused on the employee experience and providing his employees, just the best environment possible to help them thrive and ultimately his business thrive. And what he said always stuck with me. So if I ever could talk with him one on one, that would be an interesting conversation, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I just love that you threw that out there because it's just so common. I think, and this happens to me. I mean, I think it happens to everybody. No matter how many of these conversations you have, there's always going to be someone where you look at what they're doing, you look at their profile, you look at their background, and you think, oh gosh, well, they're a busy person or they wouldn't want to talk to me. But people love being acknowledged. They love being seen. And even if maybe they are too busy and maybe don't have time to speak with you right now, there's no hesitation in ever reaching out, I think, and just sharing some of the things that you shared today, and people love to hear that acknowledgement. So I love that you shared that.
Yeah. Thank you for that reminder that shouldn't be so, I don't know, shy, whatever you would call it. But yeah.
Reserved or hesitant.
Yeah.
I think we all feel that, but yeah, it was a good plug for just putting ourselves out there a little bit
Definitely.
as a fellow introvert. Well, thank you so much again for joining me. This was so helpful, and hopefully we'll have more conversations like this in the future.
Yeah, I'd love that. Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.